Well, I guess since I'm the oldest one in the whole clan, that I've got to start from way back when. My earliest recollections are when I lived on Hancock Street. Of course, I wasn't born there. Uh, my parents earlier had lived on right across the street of the women's hospital, and I was born in the women's hospital. My dad's father was one of the pillars of the Jewish community, and as a matter of fact was the first president of the B'nai. I think we better. I think where I was talking about my grandfather, who was the pillar of the Jewish community and was first president of B'nai David Synagogue. He had a grocery store on Hastings and Brewster Street. Uh, his wife, my grandmother, had given birth to 13 children by the time my dad was born. And my dad, of course, was the youngest of the 13. Most of those kids didn't live, but 6 of them I came to know. And one of the most notorious was my Uncle Bert, one of my dad's brothers. Bert was a raconteur. Had a place called Blossom Heath and several other places where gambling ran rampant in this community. In addition to that, Bert knew every politician that ever was and was closely affiliated with them. My dad's parents and his grandparents were all of them lived in the city of Detroit, and they are all buried here. My great grandparents are buried out at the Smith Street Cemetery here in Detroit, recently restored. So that's the early part of the Moss history as I know it. My dad has put a lot of stuff down for people to be able to hear and see on video and audio tape. My youth was spent pretty much on the east side of Detroit. We lived with my mother's parents for a while on Theodore Street between Hastings and Brevard. At the time, I first went to the Trowbridge School and then to the Garfield School. We moved from there to Hamilton and into Rainier Apartments. Lived there for about 2 years, and I went to the Doty School at that time. From there we moved out to Elmhurst between Lawton and Wildermere, and I lived there until I was 14 years old. Went to Roosevelt and started into Durfee in that location. My bar mitzvah took place while while we lived on Elmhurst. From Elmhurst, we moved to Philadelphia on 14th after the Depression hit, and my dad lost a bundle of money that he had made earlier. Philadelphia on 14th was a building that was purchased from some funds which were left by my grandparents, and the family, several of the family each held an interest in that building, and we lived there until such a time as the bank took over and the family interest ran out. I was 18 years old at the time, and we moved from Philadelphia and 14th to Leslie between 14th and LaSalle. It was while we lived on Leslie that I met and married Dorothy. Uh, the my early childhood was filled with a lot of ups and downs financially, uh, a lot of downs physically, um, and but they were mainly happy times. I think that here that Dorothy can get into the act, and she can tell some of the things that has happened since our marriage in 1941.
Are you me? I will tell you about when I was a little girl. I was one of 7 children, of which only 5 lived. My parents came from Russia. My mother came from a town called Haraduk, and my father came from a town called Tura. My father was a tailor, and when he came to America, he lived in New York, and then he had cousins who lived in Boston and cousins who lived here in Detroit, and he chose to come to Detroit. So I might have lived in Boston. If I did, I would never have found Harmon. I grew up, I was born on Farnsworth, and I went to the Garfield School from the kindergarten through the second grade. And we moved on the west side, and we lived on Euclid, and I went to Fairbanks, which was a country school. It was like a one room that we sat in all day long, and we got all of our studies. Then we moved on Pingree, and I went to the Thurkel School, and there I went through the 6th grade and went to intermediate, which today they call it middle school, and that was Hutchins. And I went there through the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and then we moved on Claremont.
And you belong to Harry B. Hutchins
Honor Society. That's right. I even have some medals to show that I was a good citizen. I saved them. And then we moved on Claremont, and from there we moved on Gladstone. And I went to Northern High School, and I graduated at Northern High School. I didn't further my education because in those days it was right after the Depression, and my parents felt it was more important for their son to go to college than their daughter. So I had to go out and go to work. So I went to work for Hamilton Fish Company and smelled up all my clothes. And then they let me go, and I went to work for Eastern Poultry. I went back to Hamilton Fish Company, and Betty Jane Cohn, who later they changed her name to Colby, who was my girlfriend, turned out to be my sister-in-law. And we went to her brother Sheldon's bar mitzvah. And that's where I met Harmon. And he didn't even pay any attention to me. I was all gussied up and dressed real fancy, and he didn't pay any attention. But there was a shower because Betty was marrying my brother Dave. And at the shower, my mother-in-law watched me on opening the gifts and helping, and she went home and said, Harmon, Betty is going to get a darling sister-in-law, and I want you to meet her. So at the wedding, I was a bridesmaid. He got involved. I was supposed to go out with a fellow by the name of Winkler, who was rich and owned bakeries and had a lot of money. And Harmon came into the picture, and I went with both of them that night, with Winkler and Harmon Moss, and we went to the Book Cadillac Hotel. They had, it was like a little nightclub. And Betty kept saying, make up to Winkler. Winkler has a lot of money. Harmon doesn't have as much money. But Harmon went out. Started going with him, and we were supposed to get married in August, and then the draft was coming along, and we didn't want him to go to war, and he belonged to Sheriff Sedgwick's youth club group. They were having a formal, and he was going with some gal Feinstein, who lived in Texas, and he invited her into this dance, and I said to him, if you want me to be your girlfriend, you better tell her not to come into the dance. If you don't take me to that dance, then we're finished. So he did. He wrote and told her not to come in. And she was rich. He was really planning on marrying her for her money. And we went to the dance. I still have the orchid he gave me. I've saved it. And we ended up changing our wedding date. We got married June the 21st, 1941.
To go back a little bit, I spoke about the Moss side of the family. I did not speak about the Cohn side of the family. My mother was a Cohn. She had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. But of that family, there were only, she had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, but only 2 brothers and 1 sister lived to where I really knew them. The Cohns were pretty much of a poor lot financially. My grandfather was a peddler. Used to put a pack of dry goods, pins, needles, and that kind of stuff on his back, and take the streetcar out to the city limits and then walk out to the farmhouses and peddle his stuff every day. My mother and father had 4 children. 1 who died at birth, and the 3 remaining were my brother Asher, my sister Leva, and myself. I think that we'll just let the telephone ring for a few minutes because it'll be answered. My brother lives in Grand Rapids, my sister in Toledo, and they have, each of them have done very well for themselves, married well, they are financially well off, and our family too has done quite handsomely. My job for the most part of my life was being a traffic manager, first for New Era Corporation and ultimately for Gulf and Western. I had some other jobs prior to that time, but it those were all leading up to what I called my professional status. Dorothy too was quite well thought of in the business world, and I'll let her tell you something about what she did.
Well, I was an office manager for Highland Construction. I was in charge of their rental. It was Warren Management. I worked for them for 11 years. I had 8 gals working under me. I retired when Hiram retired. I'd love to have my job back, but they won't take me back now.
I'd love for you to have your job back. I need the money.
Been retired for the last 5 years. Like, I've been playing a lot of golf. We spent the last 5 years in Florida. I don't think we're going to go back this year in '86. Find Florida a little boring. Um, I like keeping busy. I have a lot of hobbies. I like to sew. I knit. I crochet. Uh, I like to do arts and crafts. But once we get Harmon well and on the mend, I will again pick up some of my hobbies. Right now, he's my biggest concern, and so I've kind of put everything on the back burner. Um, he told you about his family. There were 5 of us that I'd lost 2 brothers at birth. They died at birth, and I never knew them. I'm the youngest of 7. My oldest sister Jean is still with us, and she's 82. I lost my very dear sister Annie about 5 years ago. And then last year we lost my brother Yudi. My brother Dave just had his 70th birthday in January. He's fine. And I celebrated my 66th birthday in February. I'm really not 66 because I was born on the 29th, and I'm only 16 and a half. So I'm not going to get old. I'm going to stay young, birthday-wise. Body-wise, I don't know. This is my fat year. Maybe 69 will be my thin year. I think the odd years are my thin years. The even years are fat years. Harmon and I got married in 41.
45 years ago yesterday.
Okay, and we had 3 children. First, we had number 1 son Gary, number 2 son Joel, and then
number 3 daughter Karen.
Then along came Karen. Spoiled her rotten. She wouldn't put on any pants. She had to be dressed like a little China doll for the first 5 years of her life. But that was my fault, because that's how I catered to her. And whenever Karen wanted something new, I pulled out the sewing machine and she got it. I wish she lived in town, but she lives in Cleveland, so we don't get to spend that much time with one another. However, we do talk a lot.
Oh yes, you talk.
I don't care, MCI, and the telephone companies all have to make money.
But we're proud of our kids.
Yes. They are all nice children. And then Karen brought us a son by the name of Richard. The boys brought us some girls, but got rid of them along the way, so what can I say? Oh, we have 5 lovely grandchildren. Sue is the oldest. Then comes Marty, and then Stacy, and then Rachel, and Stephen. He holds up the last of the Mohegans. I really wanted 6 kids. I never got 6 kids. I only ended up with 3. Thought I'd end up with a lot more grandchildren, but I only ended up with 5 so far. So somebody's lazy along the way.
I'd have been in the loony bin a long time ago if I had 6.
Yeah, but think of all the fun you'd have had, Father's Day and Mother's Day and anniversaries. I don't know, Rich. What else do you want me to tell you?
I've got to tell you a story about my grandfather, Usher Muscovich. He was a wheeler dealer at his time, and while he was always coming out on the long end of the deals, sometimes he made deals that didn't quite please my grandmother. There was one time, for instance, when he came home with a great big smile on his face, and he says to her, "Liebe, I bought a piece of land today and we are going to be moving." So she says, "And where did you buy the piece of land?" So he says, "Well, it's not too far away, but it's not too close." So, "Usher, where did you buy the piece of land?" "Well, I'll tell you." And he goes on to explain to her where this piece of land is. By today's standards, if we wanted to know where the piece of land was, it was bordered by Michigan Avenue on the north, the river on the south, Trumbull Avenue on the east, and 14th on the west, which was about 4.5 miles square piece of land. In those days, when he came to her and told her about it, this was well out in the country. And nobody, especially those in the Jewish community, would live out in the country. When would they ever be able to get to a synagogue? So my grandmother says to him, Usher, das ist nicht für uns. That's not for us. You've got to get rid of the piece of property. So he went and he convinced the guy that he should take back the money, or give him back the money that he paid for the piece of property. He paid $1,800 for that piece of property. The piece of property ultimately would have been worth untold millions of dollars. But that was my grandfather working fast deals that my grandmother couldn't handle. My father later on also worked a good deal with a piece of property. Unfortunately, his timing was bad. My dad bought a piece of property which was bounded on the south by 8 Mile Road, on the north by 9 Mile Road, on the west by John R., and on the east by Ryan. He bought this piece of property in 1928, and he put a few dollars down on the property. Because everybody at that time was buying everything on margin. Well, along came Black Thursday in 1929, and the Depression hit, and everybody was calling in all of their notes. And the bank called in for the money on this piece of property, and my dad did not have anywhere near the amount of money which was necessary. So he too lost out. Had he bought the property for cash when he first made the deal and he had the cash, that piece of property was worth untold millions of dollars. So like father, like son, you know, you buy it but you don't got it.
But you never bought any property, so you don't have to worry.
I bought one piece of property in my life and came out even Steven. I didn't lose anything out of it, but I didn't make anything. We had some real estate nicks in the family. Julius Berman, for one, who made loads and loads of money. Bill Berman, his son, is an extremely wealthy man, wheeling and dealing in real estate.
He asked for anecdotes. Is that an anecdote? You want something funny?
Oh, you want funny?
Funny thing, yeah. Who cares about your rich relative?
Well, that's...
Do you remember when we were moving to Minnesota? I didn't want to go, no way, but they told me if I didn't go, he'd hate me for the rest of his life, so I gave in and we went. And I was told, I'd never been west, and I was told there were Indians out west. And we came to this town, what was the name of the town? They had madness sales, and everybody was dressed like Indians, and we drive up and oh my God.
Well, that was the Dells.
We were in the Wisconsin Dells. And there were Indians swarming all over the place. My heart was in my mouth. I wanted to go back. I didn't want to live there with the Indians. Well, then I realized that they weren't real Indians. They were dressed like that. And then someone said to me, "You're going to Minnesota?" You know, make sure you live on the top floor of any apartment that you move in, because you're going to get snowed in. They get so much snow there that you'll have to dig your way out. So we did. We rented an apartment, and I didn't want to. That's the only way, because I figured when time came to get out of Minnesota, I can get out of there fast. I ain't gonna own nothing then. So we're up on the second floor, and it snowed. Our drapes were closed. Harmon goes and opens the drapes about so big, and it had snowed, and we had an air conditioner under the window, and the snow had piled up on top of the air conditioner. And he yelled, "Dorothy, come here quick!" It snowed all the way up to the second floor. When I saw that, I thought I was going to die. Let's get out of here. I am not going to live in this town till I realized that the snow was on the air conditioner, not from the ground up. But that was a cold, cold place. Karen liked it. Joe liked it. I didn't like it. That was another fat meal. Wow. I catered to my family. I made banquets 7 nights a week. They had appetizers, soup, they had entrees, they had desserts. I learned to bake and cook like nobody else in my life.
And you were your best customer.
Yes, I had to taste it all.
But do you remember there was a time when we still lived on North Lawn, and Joe had a boyfriend by the name of Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
And they were playing in the house, and walked in the house, and we smelled some smoke, and said to the kids, "Were you playing with matches?" And they said no. Well, we couldn't very much do anything to Harvey, but we sent him home and said to Joe, "Joe, were you playing with matches?" And he says no. So I says, "Joe, you're telling a lie. And people who lie go to jail." So I packed Joe up and put him in the car and took him over to the Schaefer police station. And the sergeant at the desk greeted us, and I told him about Joe having, first of all, lit matches, and then having lied about it. So he took Joe and he took him back to the lockup.
Oh, he fingerprinted him.
Oh, yes, he did. He fingerprinted him and took him back to the lockup where there was some bum sleeping off or drunk or something, and showed Joel the situation and says, "Would you like to be locked up here?" He said, "Well, if I have to be locked up, I'll be locked up." And the policeman said, "But you wouldn't want a record of having been arrested and locked up in jail." And he says, "If you promise that you won't play with matches, and especially if you won't lie again, I'll see to it that you're released in your father's custody."
Well, the reason he wanted what they were doing, they had watched television, and the cowboys, when they would shoot, there'd be smoke coming out from their guns. So they were playing cowboys, and they were lighting the tips of their guns. And when they heard us coming in the house, I had a nylon cover, and it burnt the whole side of the couch. They were fortunate. It could have been tragic if no one had been there.
But I did it to Joel because my father did the same thing to me when I was a young kid. And I snatched 50 cents from my mother's purse, and my father took me to the juvenile detention home.
Yeah, but tell them about the time you got your cousin David snitched a candy bar at the Kresge's dime store, and they put him in the back and called the police, and he ate up the evidence. He ate up the candy and all the paper.
I told David to steal the candy bar. He got caught.
Isn't that awful?